This episode was brought to you by Alpha House of Fashion, specialists in African and English wear, wedding gowns, corporate wear, embroidery designs and logos. Baseline Media Intellects, bringing your vision to life with lighting, sound and rigging, all to a professional degree. And Batched by ZAHRA, generous servings of authentic Pakistani burfis, brownies and bakes at an unbeatable price. Enjoy. إن الحمد لله وكفاه والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباد الله الذين ارتضى ومن بهداه من اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة التقى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم. Welcome to episode 4 of season 3 of the Scholar and the Student podcast. You can't get rid of us that easily. Alhamdulillah, we are back and it's always an adventure to get this thing up and running. But alhamdulillah, it always works out for the better and we're always happy with the guests we have and whatever we manage to cook up in this little kitchen of ours. So my name is Mustaqim Habib al-Maliki, aka Moss, and so far in season 3 of The Scholar and the Student, we had brother Thalib Razi, our first fiction author, if you will, because I know Sheikh Ismail Kamdar has also written books. He was a musician. We had our first female guest, Sana Asim from the UK. Last I checked, she was in Kyoto, so best of wishes to her all the way in Japan. Then we had our first Malay guest, Pan-Asian Goes Global, aka Mana. And today for episode 4, we decided to get someone who embodies pretty much every single one of those qualities and discuss with her about many different things, whether it be novels, music, or being a Muslim woman in these spaces. And she just also happens to be of Malay origin, just like Mana. So alhamdulillah, I'm so excited and glad that I've gotten to our show for the first time from down under, that is Australia, for all you people. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to Botswana for the first time, Melati Lum. Assalamu alaikum, Melati. How are you doing?
Alaikum salam. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Moss.
You're welcome. Well, I don't know if it was wonderful or if I just butchered everything about it, but I usually start by allowing the guests to briefly introduce themselves in a broader light and hopefully do a better job than I did. Tell us everything that you would want the listeners and the viewers to know about Melati Lum. What is your life story?
Oh my gosh. Okay, where do you even start? That's a really interesting question because, like in different spaces, you are different people almost to different, in different audiences almost. So I guess in this space, I come to you as a Muslim author from Australia. So in Australia, we have a minority Muslim population. I think this is similar in Botswana. But slowly, the Muslim voices have actually been very, very slowly have kind of come up in terms of the publishing space. So this year, in a couple of weeks, for the second time ever, I guess, there's going to be an Australian Muslim Writers Festival. So we're looking forward to that. But it's taken all this time, I guess, and Muslims have been in Australia for hundreds of years, really. So it's taken all this time for something like this to kind of happen. But it's looking positive, and I'm just excited to be part of that.
Amazing. And the interesting thing you mentioned, alluding to Botswana as well, because we're also, I guess we've been around Muslims in Botswana since the 1800s, so pretty much the same time as Australian Muslims, I guess. And I just wanted to come at it from this angle. Usually when you have a fledgling community, there's an emphasis on the children that they should have good paying jobs, or stable jobs, for example, your engineers, your lawyers, your doctors, and so on and so forth. All these cultural aspects, whether it be music or writing books, that's usually, it takes a back seat if it even gets a seat at all in the car. So did you always want to be a writer? Because in the little blurb that I had on Instagram, I did steal from your website, by the way, that you do have a background in criminal law as well. I also studied law and I'm practicing in mostly the corporate field. But did you always want to be a writer in some stead? Because we all read books as we were growing up. And was that venture into law just a sort of excuse or just to show people, hey, I've got a stable job, but it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. How did you get into writing and decide to be a full-time author?
I have to say, I've loved reading ever since I was a kid, but I had never actually thought that I would actually become a writer, like in reality. I didn't think that was an option that was available to me or open. So it wasn't even something that entered my mind, I have to say, until there was always, that kind of fantasy, I guess, that you kind of like, oh, I'd love to be a writer one day, or I'd love to write a book one day. But in my mind, pretty much until I started, which was around 2015, I didn't think that was really possible for me. So it's something that I think the thing that kind of got me going, or at least kind of I took a chance at it, was the fact that self-publishing kind of became available for a lot more people. At the time I first wrote the first book, which is in the Ayesha Dean mysteries, I didn't even think that there'd be an audience in the main kind of publishing world in Australia. I just thought that I wanted Muslims around the world to be able to have something that they could, a book that they could see themselves reflected in, or their own experiences reflected in. And I just thought, I just want to be able to have that available for Muslims around the world. It was only after I published it that other people were saying, okay, this might actually have, a wider audience. There are people who are not Muslims who would be interested in this type of stories as well. And that's when we saw a lot more Muslim authors being published around the world. So it's hopefully looking better for the future. But yeah, in terms of what I thought that I would do, I didn't think that would happen for me until I actually did it. So yeah, going into law was that again is a bit of not an accident, but also when I first started studying law, I didn't think that I'd actually be a lawyer. I thought that I don't know, I was interested in the law, but I just it's one of those things that in my I guess my world, the profession is very white and male dominated, and I hadn't seen anyone who looked like me in the legal profession here either. So I kind of thought, I don't know if I can. I didn't really see myself in that world either. But then after a while, I guess it just somehow happened with, you're meant to go on a particular path, and Allah puts you on that path. You don't know what path that's going to be. It just somehow happens. So that was my foray into the law as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And you have been alluding to this, but what would you say is the real importance of representation? And bouncing off this question, where is Hollywood going wrong in terms of representation today? I mean, okay, there's one group of people that gets annoyed at every little thing, that even if it's a female protagonist, which makes sense in a certain setting, they'll just get upset at the fact that it's a female protagonist. We're not talking about that. But I'll speak of Hollywood in particular. I'm sure it happens with authors as well. There is a sort of attempt to shoehorn certain things in, or push certain things in to kind of, shall I say, quote unquote, pander to a certain audience. And you may disagree with this, feel free to, but why is Hollywood failing to do representation correctly? And how can authors or filmmakers in the Muslim sphere, first and foremost, and everyone else who may be, a person of color, for example, who may be of an ethnic minority, how can they do representation right? Because I've brought this up in other episodes as well, that when you talk about Muslim protagonists in a novel, just because you change the guy's name from, I don't know, James to Hassan or something, doesn't automatically make it a Muslim-centric or Islamic-centric story if he's still doing all the haram things that James was going to do anyway. So how do we do this right? And where is mainstream media falling short, in your opinion?
I think it's such a new thing now. So we haven't, like in Hollywood, till now, we haven't really seen much representation at all, good representation of Muslims. It's only starting, I think, to change, because they're realizing, actually, there is a huge audience out there who are interested in these stories. I think what is important is that in a lot of these stories, to get it right, you do need someone who is a Muslim from the inside. so to speak, I guess, who really knows, who can catch the nuances of certain things. Because, I mean, obviously there's, you know, a fifth of the world's population are Muslim. I'm not sure if I got that right, but it's a lot of people, and you're not going to get a uniform opinion on anything. In like even a room full of Muslims, you're not going to get a uniform opinion on most things. But that's not the thing that makes, what makes someone Muslim is, you know, very, very few things, you know, it's just your belief and in the things that all Muslims believe in. But in terms of how you live your life, there's a wide range of ways of doing things that come under the same umbrella of being a Muslim. So in order to represent those Muslims, there needs to be a wide variety of different stories out there, because each person really has their own story. Each individual has their own story, and so there can be a multitude of stories, a multitude of ways of doing things. But I guess what makes it authentic is that if you get a Muslim to tell their story, they're aware of the certain nuances that a non-Muslim won't be aware of. And I think as a Muslim, you can, when you see it on the screen, you know if there is a Muslim behind it or not. I've just started watching it. I haven't finished it, but there's a new show called Mo on Netflix, and I've just watched the first few episodes, but immediately I can tell that there is a Muslim behind that, because there are all these little in jokes or just little you know, nuances that, you know, as a Muslim you understand. Okay, this is just a part of our life. This is part of our everyday, and it's not done in a way that's disrespectful. It is just done as this is our life, and I'm telling the story. So I think it's really it's a new thing that we're seeing in Hollywood, and I'm you know, all for that. I think it's great to have the more stories that can be told from all different people's perspectives, the better. But I guess in the past, what we've seen is just that blanket kind of bad guy Muslim. You know, that's all. The Muslim always has to be either a terrorist, or if they're a woman, they have to be oppressed and they have to be wanting to escape the religion, or that kind of thing. They've pretty much in the past always been kind of put into this box that if you're a Muslim, you have to be this. But the reality is obviously so different, because you're going to get a whole bunch of different, in the same way that people who are not Muslims have a whole bunch of different stories as well. That's the same for Muslims, of course, because everyone's, while we share the same faith, we are individuals. We are going to respond to things differently. And that's what's interesting in telling stories, trying to see all the different kind of ways a person reacts or responds to whatever is thrown at them.
That's a very beautiful answer, and it kind of answered a couple of other things I had going on in my head, because I was going to bounce off that, you know, when you talked about Muslims being put in a certain box, there was always the Arab-looking guy who had a weird accent and, you know, quote-unquote terrorist, and woman was always oppressed. Would you say that within some sections of the Muslim community, in response to that box, they've sort of created this other sort of standard that if it's not something like Ertuğrul, which has pros and cons, if it's not something like that, then it's not quote unquote true Muslim representation. If it's about maybe some random Muslim guy who struggles with everything else that we've struggled with, you know, hanging out with people of the opposite gender, for example, and not always getting those things right, sometimes struggling when your friends want to go to a place where alcohol is being served and struggling to say no to that, or navigating around those challenges. And sometimes, because the reality is that many Muslims do fall into that sort of thing, whether we condone it or not, or whether we like it or not, it is happening. So instead of seeing these stories or making those stories get heard, or even if they are heard, they're told in such a cliche way and it comes out very preachy. So how would you say that we should guard against this creation of a new box, which is basically just a strong arm measure or just a knee-jerk reaction to everything that's been going on in the past?
Do you mean in terms of in terms of not being preachy, or just coming up in mostly not being preachy, because, you know, I mentioned Ertuğrul, and yeah, there are moments in Ertuğrul which is
well, which are pretty epic, but some people just take it way too seriously, as if it's the sixth pillar of Islam or something. I mean, and you know, some people fail to separate the art from the artist, that the people who portrayed those people, they're not actual historical figures. Those are actors, and in their personal lives they may be different from the people they are actually portraying on screen, and that's led to a whole slew of ridiculous incidents which we don't need to get into. So stuff like that I think there's a sentiment that Muslims have been portrayed as the bad guy for so long. So what we need to do as Muslims is portray them as the best of people, as the definite good guys who are perfect beyond measure. I don't know if you've noticed that as well. How can we counteract that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think, and that's part of the reason why I wrote my Ayesha Dean, when I first wrote Ayesha Dean Mysteries, was because I was trying to look for reading material for my son, who was that age at the time. And all I could find was preachy stuff, you know, like all I could find was like, do not do this because you are a Muslim, that type of book. And then the book that was, he did, you know, the character in the book did something wrong, and then all of a sudden it was just like, you can't do that because you're a Muslim. Like it was, you know, we understand, we've grown up with what we can and can't do. Is a lot of people, unfortunately, I think a lot of the learning and the education in many places has been focused on rules and regulations rather than looking at the inside and how to cultivate that, the sense of the spiritual, and how you can cultivate your relationship with Allah in your life. But, you know, that's another topic. But in terms of how we kind of put that or portray that in media, I think it is important to what makes a character, I guess, likable, and also, you know, for people to be able to see themselves in them, there needs to have that kind of human aspect in that. No, you know, we're not perfect. We're going to be making mistakes. It's how, you know, what we do with those mistakes and how we kind of respond to all of that. And that's I guess that's the exciting thing in when you're, you know, listening or reading a story, is to see how this kind of imperfect person has responded to whatever it is that they need to do. I mean, I loved Ertuğrul as well. I watched, you know, hundreds of episodes, but yeah, it did get to the point where I was like, you know, pretty much the same thing is happening over and over again. The good guys, well, in this case, the Muslims always win. It was like fairy tale in the sense of, in that kind of sense. But you know, I enjoyed it. It was great. But I would really love to see a whole range of shows and media out there that kind of did explore all the different aspects of human life and Muslim life. And to do that, you kind of just need more of it. You know, you need more of, I guess, there's all the difficulties in that is the, you know, funding and all of those things that come with all of making these types of shows. It's not easy. And there's so many things that need to be done in the world. So it's like balancing it all up, and, you know, how much do we spend or how much time do we put towards this and or something else. So yeah, lots of challenges there. But in terms of, I don't know if you saw this show. I think it was on, I can't remember if it was on Netflix, but it was called We Are Lady Parts.
Yes. Well, here, yeah, it wasn't on Netflix around here. I think it was on Peacock, which is an American thing. We had to jump through a couple of hurdles to get it. But I've seen clips of it, and as a punk myself, that really spoke to me.
Yeah, I thought that was amazing, because I don't think we'd seen anything like that before, in terms of really kind of breaking those stereotypes and kind of looking at the different types of people out there, Muslims. So I really enjoyed that show, even though obviously there's, you know, certain things that different people might not agree with or whatever. It was just nice to see that range of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And a side note there, one of my episodes was with Celt Islam. So he's from the UK, and he was part of the punk scene when it first came. So we're talking about the Clash, the Sex Pistols, that whole scene. He was part of it, and he still calls himself a punk until this day. And to cut a long story short, the history of Islam in the UK is pretty much the history of punk rock, because they are so intertwined. And of course, there are people in the punk scene who do things that we don't agree with, like drink, for example, or take certain drugs. But there is that element of standing up to the man, and, you know, all these qualities that even myself growing up, that's why I still call myself a punk, that these qualities that are in line and in tandem with our Islamic teachings as well. So we take that and make it our own, really, so to speak. So that was just a side note. So yeah, I really loved everything you brought to the floor in regards to not being preachy. And your own novel series, the Ayesha Dean series. Tell us about that. One of them, according to your website, is getting a manga adaptation. How did that happen? Who's doing the art? Where can we check out your books and the manga when it comes out? And yeah, walk us through how you got to that whole point of writing a book about this Muslim teenager called Ayesha Dean and what does she do and all that.
Yeah, so Ayesha Dean, I've always loved reading, and again, I did kind of start it because my son, when I first had the idea, my son was in that age group, so which is a pre-teen age group, so it's around the 10 to 12 year old group, and I just thought that would be a nice group to write for, because I hadn't seen much in the Muslim space and Muslim publishing space for that. And again, all I had seen was kind of the preachy type stuff, the preachy kind of, so nothing that he would kind of really enjoy, I think, reading just as a matter of, for entertainment, because I kind of thought it would be really nice for our kids to also have a form of entertainment, which is reading, but obviously quite a good, nice, good, productive form of entertainment that wasn't filled with what we see in pop culture today. Like they've got an overload of pop culture, which is the dominant culture around in the West anyway, in terms of what is available for kids to regard as entertainment. So that's why I started it. So Ayesha Dean basically is a teenage Muslim sleuth. She you do have to suspend a bit of disbelief in that she can somehow have the money to go traveling around the world, but that's what she does. She travels around the world, and in each location she goes to, she uncovers some of the Islamic history of those areas, and also gets involved in the mystery and has to obviously solve the mystery. But in the meantime, she learns about the culture, the food, and has a good time. But in all of that, she's a Muslim, and so I wanted to create a character that kids could look up to and be proud of, really, who want to, just to enjoy, and actually to be proud that she is a practicing Muslim. She doesn't, it's part of her life, but she's not preachy about it. She's got non-Muslim friends. Her best friends are like a Lebanese Christian girl and another Australian girl who is not particularly religious, but they're all friends and they support each other, and I just wanted to be able to show that in a story, because I think that's what most kids here in Australia, especially if they don't go to a Muslim school, they will be in a situation where they will be friends with non-Muslims, and the dominant culture here is not necessarily what you get at the mosque, in terms of it. If you go to a party on Saturday night, for example, it's going to be different. Kids are going to be put in a different environment. So I just wanted them to be able to see themselves reflected in Ayesha, in a character where you can be proud of your religion, you can be proud of who you are, you can practice your religion, yet you can still live a kind of normal life with all the people around you. In terms of the manga, yes, the first Ayesha Dean, which is called the Istanbul Intrigue, is currently being adapted into a manga. The people I'm working with are called Fictional Frontiers, and they're from the US. Usually it is quite a slow process, so we've started that process, and I'm doing the writing part of the adapting, and there's an artist who is from Indonesia who's doing the artwork. So it's slowly but surely happening. But yeah, it's very exciting, and I can't wait for that to be shared. But it will probably be about a year or so, at least from this point in time.
Care to savor some authentic Pakistani dessert? Fancy some brownies? Need a specialized package for a special event? Batch by ZAHRA has got you covered. Call or WhatsApp 74755 678 and get your batch now, a generous helping at an absolutely unbeatable price, attested to be absolutely tasty by us here at The Scholar and the Student. All right. Okay, well, that's still very exciting, I'm sure, to have your own work or to see your own work come to life in another medium, and in this like manga, which for many of us, you know, is truly a dream come true. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about each of the books? I believe it's a trilogy in the Ayesha Dean series. So the Istanbul Intrigue was the first, and okay, what are the second and third ones? And although, of course, you wouldn't want to give away spoilers, but what is the basic premise of sort of each one? Are they like standalone stories, or do you have to have read the first one to understand what's happening in the second and third?
No, they're all standalone stories. But the way I wrote it was the first one is quite very, I guess, it is a middle grade book, and it is quite middle grade. If you read it, you can see it is for possibly it's really difficult with children because they all do have different reading abilities, but say 9 to 12 is the middle grade kind of age range, and the Istanbul Intrigue would be on the lower end of that. And as I progressed with the Seville Secret, which is the second one, and then the Lisbon Lawbreaker, which is the third one, I'd say the Lisbon Lawbreaker is on the higher end of that. So I tried to kind of make it more mature as we went on, and you can see that also in the book length. So the books get longer as they progress. So the first one is basically she goes to Istanbul. I think I already talked a bit about that. But the second one is the Seville Secret. She goes to Seville. Again, Seville has, obviously, Spain has a very deep Muslim history. And I really wanted her to, it is very difficult history as well, because I am writing for children. You kind of really do need to balance with the reality of what happened with the Spanish Inquisition. But obviously, you don't want to, traumatize the children. So you kind of got to balance the writing out in a way that hopefully is appropriate still for the age group. So I hope I was able to do that. But the way I did that with that one is that she finds a diary, and at the time she's trying to solve a mystery, another kind of story is happening back then in the time of the Inquisition. So I wanted to be able to bring that history into it. But in a way that it is, hopefully children can kind of understand what happened, but, in a way that it was appropriate for the age group. So that's that one. And then in the Lisbon Lawbreaker, she goes to Lisbon, Portugal. And again, Lisbon had a strong Muslim history there as well, nearly 500 years of Muslim rule, which many people are not aware of. So I wanted her to go there and bring up some of that as well. I actually, it's my favorite out of the three, because I hope that I'm learning as a writer, and I feel like I hope that I have learnt something over the years. And I'm, each time I try to improve the writing. So I like that story, and I also love Lisbon. I've been back a few times and I want to go back again. It's just a beautiful place. The people are just lovely, and it's got such an interesting history as well. So she's growing up in that one. But again, it's probably for a upper middle grade, lower young adult audience. So again, mysteries. They're all pretty light-hearted though, like in terms of, it's not something that you have to be worried for your child to go into. They're fun, exciting, and and that's it. A little bit of history, but I hope they are just exciting. Books.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take it they're all available on Kindle and all the usual stuff. I'll put them down in the description below.
Yep, yeah, anything, like pretty much all online bookstores. There are mainly available online, but there are some bookstores that have them in print. But you can order them wherever you can find books online, and Kindle as well. I'm working on the audiobook as well, but that's gonna take a while, I think. Yeah, absolutely. And on your website, you did mention that your background in criminal law
kind of inspired you to start writing mystery novels, and that culminated in the Ayesha Dean series. Could you expand a bit more about that? I mean, I don't think I've worked on too many criminal cases in my working tenure, which is not very long at all. But okay, were you somewhat exaggerating there, or did I just not get the message there completely? And you mentioned about, was it Yugoslavia in terms of your work in criminal law and so on and so forth. And you also mentioned that you didn't want to traumatize the kids so much. So how exactly did your background in criminal law push you to writing mystery novels for, well, let's say children or young adults?
I guess what the background in criminal law did was gave me an understanding of a criminal case, how the criminal world functions in terms of from investigation to prosecution. I work with detectives on a daily basis, so I know how they operate. I know the ins and outs of the investigation, how it all comes together, and how it all culminates in the eventual prosecution. So I guess having that background, in a way it helps, but also in a way it doesn't, because you kind of the reality of how a criminal case operates doesn't necessarily lend itself to the suspense that you need for a mystery novel. So obviously, in reality, you might have a court date and then 10 weeks later is the next one. In this one, you want everything to kind of happen very, very quickly. So there are some parts where I have to go, okay, I just have to ignore what happens in real life and just trying to describe it in a bit more of a quick manner. But then again, the things that I've seen in terms of the types of cases, it's like human beings, there doesn't seem to be any end to the horrible things that can be done, that they do to each other. So I guess I don't want, the mystery, they're lighthearted, they're fun. So I don't want the reality necessarily to come into them, but having that background, working with police and knowing how things operate kind of helps to a degree in terms of plotting the novel, and kind of looking at an investigation from a point of view of this happens and then this happens and then this happens kind of thing.
Okay, well, that definitely makes sense. And I guess my next question to you would be, how did you actually sit yourself down and get to writing the books? Because I believe that many authors will testify that that's probably the hardest part, is that they've got so many ideas. They've got these revolutionary ideas almost in their minds, but then to put pen to paper or to sit down and type however many words a day. And if you've got a full-time job, then this is exacerbated to an nth degree. How did you personally find the time to actually pen your ideas to paper? And obviously above and beyond that, you're self-published, so organizing everything there and all the other things in terms of promotion. How did that process come about?
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like I had, at the time I started, I had one day off. I had gone to part-time for one day off a week. And that one day I used to do a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But for part of that day, I would write. So I'd say, look, I have 3 hours and I'm just going to write for those 3 hours. I know a lot of writers who say you have to write every day. I just didn't have the time to do that every day, because I have a family as well, and I have a bunch of other things that I had to do, obviously, in my week. So I only had a few hours a week to do it, but I did those every week. So every week I would just do that, and not every week. Some weeks I didn't get to do it. So, but it just, I guess, the consistency of, if you just start with once a week, and then you just kind of add a little bit on, a little bit on, a little bit on. After a while, you come up with your first full draft, and then after that, once you've got your draft, you've got something to work with in terms of, you've got the kind of the outline there. You just have to kind of make it better, a lot better, because the first draft is always really bad. And I think that's it. I think now I've started writing again, not Ayesha Dean, something a little bit different, but I've gone about it a different way. So I haven't, it's not complete yet. It's nowhere near complete, actually. It's just started. So, but the method that I've used is put all the characters, or get a bit more planning done first, rather than just start, which is what I did before. So yeah, everyone has their different techniques. I'm still learning and I'm still trying to see what works for me. But definitely one thing that I can say to do is that even though the first draft looks bad, don't worry, just keep working at it and hopefully it will get better. It'll improve. It's just like that first draft when you see it and when you read it again, it's just awful. And you kind of like, you know, there's lots of doubts that come into your mind and because you just think, oh, this is just horrible. I can't do anything about this. But there is always something that you can do and there's help that you can get from other people. So yeah, I guess that's what I say. Just keep going. That's all you can do.
Amazing. And I really hope that will be of benefit to all the aspiring authors in our audience, whether they're watching this episode or listening to it on Spotify or whatever. We've come to the section of the podcast now, Melati, where I hand it over to you to ask me a question or a series of questions, however in-depth you want them answered. So put me on the spot. We're both lawyers, so I don't think I'll be pushed for anything, but yeah, give it your best shot.
Okay, I heard a rumor that you used to be in a punk band.
well, yeah,
so, I want to know what is your what's your jam like in terms of what's your inspiration? Are you still playing? And what kind of what's your inspiration? Are you still playing and where to from here?
Okay. It's an interesting rumor because I'm the one who spread it to you in particular, but all my friends can attest to it. So I did get really into punk music in my high school days. And yes, I was punk and I still do identify as punk. When I said I was a lead guitarist in a punk band, okay, I guess there's something being lost in translation. Yes, I was the punk. Yes, I was playing lead guitar, but the band itself wasn't necessarily punk. We were in high school, first of all, so it's not like we could start singing God Save the Queen, the Sex Pistols version, unless we wanted to get expelled or something. So there was that aspect. Also, the way we came together, we had different musical tastes, and that was sort of a hodgepodge mixture of music that we used to make. So I guess, it's really weird. Me and music, growing up as a child, I didn't really care about it. I used to go to friends' houses and they would be listening to Westlife or something, and I'd see the thing and I'm like, what is this? I don't understand what it is. I mean, I understand English, I understand the lyrics, but I don't see what's so great about it. And yeah, I'd hear music when I'm watching TV or watching anime or something. The Dragon Ball Z theme song, English version, is still stuck in my head. But I never really cared about it. But as I grew older, I think when I got to my teenage years, I first found heavy metal. And then from heavy metal, I sort of branched into punk. Well, it was heavy metal, then alternative rock in general. And obviously alternative rock is derived from punk. But I think what got me into punk, and I might have mentioned this in my episode with Celt Islam, much to the chagrin of some purists, punk purists, was Green Day. And I still say Green Day is my favorite band until today. And I understand some of their material, it's a bit more on the poppy side of punk, but I'd still classify it as punk. And after that, I got into the more OG punk, if you will, first wave of punk. So your Sex Pistols, Clash and all that. I like all of them. Anything from punk rock to hardcore punk to skate punk to pop punk, if you will, even the Fall Out Boys and the Paramores, that's also something I like. So yeah, I was really, yes, go on. Yeah.
Can I ask, has that I guess had an impact in terms of the Muslim community and how you've been able to, play music and all of that? Has that been an issue?
Okay. Initially, no, because once upon a time I was just a high school kid. No one knew. So whatever high school kids do in their spare time is, honestly speaking, no one else's business. I'm sure if some people found out about it, they would have tried to talk to me, but I don't think I was as popular back then. Maybe some people would like to think I was more popular, but no. So I wasn't really doing it with sort of Islam in mind. I mean, I might have had it. I guess I didn't really care much about practicing Islam initially, but I guess we all go through that sort of stage. And when I did, it's interesting you bring that up, because when I did start, getting more into practicing Islam, whatever your definition of that is, I did jump onto the bandwagon of music is haram, and I stayed away from music for almost a good decade. However, as I got more into learning about Islam and I found out that there are other opinions, not to say that one is necessarily right and one is better than the other, but there are other opinions, and I'm an artistic person. So if I express myself through music, then why just let it go? So that was one thing. I'm guessing, or I am maybe presuming, that it would be more of sort of a controversial thing now, being who I am, and after having gone through my phases, because I sort of made my name as a conservative sort of guy here in Botswana, and now I'm sort of not as conservative. I'm taking elements of my initial punk self, but still blending it with Islam. So maybe it would cause more of a stir right now, but you can't take all of this to light. I mean, I can't sit here the whole day listening to people's criticisms. I've heard criticisms about the most mundane things in my life. So I've decided I'm just going to filter out the noise. I will only take criticism from people I actually respect and care about. So yeah, I'm assuming there will be backlash, but I don't really care much about it. Going back to your initial question about what does the future hold for me in terms of music, like I said, I am still getting back into the whole music thing. So yeah, I would like to obviously play punk, maybe even metal. But one thing that Brother Thalib Razi said to me is that I should really hamper down on a style of, in this case, guitar. That was my instrument that I want to play, and take it from there. And this is the first time I'm mentioning it in public. So this is a privilege for you, I guess. I really want to blend punk rock with traditional Tswana music. It sounds crazy, sounds revolutionary, but it's been done with traditional Irish music. Celtic punk is an actual genre. It's been done with even traditional Arabic music. There are bands like Mirath, who are like, you know, they're from Morocco and Tunisia, all these places. They blend heavy metal with traditional Arabic music. So I really want to push forward something that blends punk rock with traditional Tswana music and see where we can go from there. I no longer have that teenage desire of being the best guitarist in the world. I think that section of me is like non-existent anymore. Now I just want to play music to express myself and maybe make the world a better place, somewhat, maybe like Bob Dylan, if that's not too hippie. But that is basically me and music.
Oh, that's awesome. Look forward to listening to some of that. Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. And if there are any other musicians in the audience who would like to collaborate with me, please let me know and we can absolutely make it happen. Alhamdulillah. So Melati, we have been going on for quite a while, mashallah. I thoroughly enjoyed our session, and apologies for all the inconsistencies, the delays, and the little break we had in the middle. But all these adventures make reaching the summit at the end all the more worthwhile. Some parting words from yourself to anyone out there, aspiring authors, particularly Muslim women who may have aspirations of being not only authors, but anything, because, so I'm told, Muslim women kind of get a lot of flack for things that are, once again, very silly. But you, having gone through all that, having published all these books, this trilogy, having lived your life to this extent and gone through the corporate ladder, so to speak, in terms of criminal law, knowing what that system is like, what's your advice to people in general who want to follow their dreams, and specifically women, Muslim, let's say Muslim women, and generally speaking women as well?
Oh, wow. I think that's, it's hard for me to necessarily say, because I feel like we're always learning, and, I am always learning every day. I kind of find something new out about how I live my life as well. So I guess I can only say to give everyone encouragement, hopefully, that to be your authentic self, I guess. Easier said than done. I think for me, it's taken a long time to even recognize things within myself that I kind of didn't even know existed. And a lot of the times we kind of hide things within ourselves as well, just being human beings. But I guess it's I'm trying to learn to look deeper into myself, and trying to live authentically in that. Yeah, I feel weird giving this advice because I feel like I'm not where I want to necessarily be, yet. I feel like I have further to go and further to develop. But in terms of that, I feel like it's taken me a long time to realize, we're not here to please other people. In the end, as Muslims, of course, we believe the only really relationship that lasts and that you really want to cultivate is between you and Allah. And for that, once I guess if we all can realize that, it kind of frees you to do whatever you want, to be whoever you can be, without necessarily being scared or afraid of what other people are thinking about you. So, for what it's worth, yeah, I'll end with that.
Okay, amazing. And where can the audience find you? On which platforms are you at? So, and are you open to them, I don't know, inviting you onto their podcast or something?
Yeah, of course. I'm mainly on Instagram, which is Melati.Lum. But I have a website. I'm sometimes on Twitter or Facebook. Not really. I'm there, but I'm not really there. But yeah, you can reach me on any platform really. And yeah, hope to see you there.
Amazing.
And yeah, if you can buy my books, that would be, or share my books around, that would be lovely as well.
Absolutely. I was just about to say that, but we will leave all those links to Melati's socials as well as all the links to purchase her books. I know in Botswana, it might be a bit of a mission to get hard copies, but we've always got Kindle and ebook formats for that. So thank you very much for taking your time out of your night. I know it's night down there in Australia. Well, I don't know why I keep saying down under, because it's down under to everyone else, but we're practically on the same line because we're both on the southern hemisphere. But yeah, thank you very much for taking time out of your night to do this, and we really hope it's beneficial to everyone who wanted to know a bit about writing, a bit about Melati, and we hope that you'd be interested and go and actually purchase her books, because Brother Thalib Razi did mention that he was publishing his book, The Enchanter's Counsel. It has been released, so go check that out as well. And I think, Melati, you'd enjoy that. I'm going through it right now. I haven't finished it. It's basically an Islamic fantasy novel. Think about like Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, and it's not just the Muslim version, but what if Islam was revealed onto goblins and elves and those sorts of races, if you will. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, all right. I'll check it out. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. And I guess as we say in Malay, terima kasih. So yeah.
Sama-sama.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you very much. Yeah. Assalamualaikum to Melati and everyone else out there. Much love and stay blessed. Thank you very much for seeing this through to the end. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating if you're using an audio platform. All of these things drive up the algorithm, as well as commenting, so let us know how it was for you. A special shout out once again to our sponsors, Alpha House of Fashion, Baseline Media Intellects, and Batch by ZAHRA. The Ko-fi and Patreon links for donations are live and down below. Remember to donate only if you have the means to do so. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum. Peace.